Hello everybody, this is Magda Giurcanu from National Louis University, and together with Joe Rice, we are organizing a series of interviews with public officials and community organizers to explore civic initiatives in the Chicago area. We are the Growing Democracy Group, an interdisciplinary effort committed to youth engagement. We hope you enjoy our episodes. We have today Lani Montreal, an educator, writer, performer, and community activist. Her writings have been published and produced in Canada, the US, the Philippines, and in cyberspace. Among her plays, Panther in the Sky, Gift of Tongue, Looking for Darna, Alien Citizens, Grandmother and I, and her most toured comedy drama about gender and immigration, Sister Outlaw. She is the recipient of several awards, and she holds an MFA in creative writing from Roosevelt University, currently teaching at Malcolm X College, one of the city colleges of Chicago. Welcome, Lani. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Why would you define yourself as a community activist? Give us a bit of a sense of the work.
I'm very intentional with the kind of work that I put out there or that I do, and it has to do with building community. I feel that's why I always enjoyed theater, because it's a very collaborative medium and you engage the community, you engage the audience with the work that you're putting out and issues that you're raising with the work that you're putting out there. That's how I would define community activism, as someone who engages the community with allowing them to participate in discourses about issues that are important to them, and also has to do with social justice, looking at the different intersectionalities of the issues that they experience, and also building solidarity with other communities that are at risk, or communities that feel that they need more visibility or they need a voice. That's how I define it.
As a professor in class and an activist, you're definitely embedded in several communities, giving our interests here in bridging that divide between the academic world and the community world. Give us a sense of some of the challenges one would encounter when trying to step outside of the classroom and engage with communities.
I am an educator. I teach composition and writing at Malcolm X College, and I am also a playwright, and so I write plays outside of the academe, and sometimes I bring the plays to the school. And so one of the things that I do outside of the classroom is community work. Some of it is being part of the organization that I'm with. It's called Circ Up and Dig. We do a lot of theater, but also education on issues that affect the community, the immigrant community, the Filipino American community. One example that I can give is my recent play, which is Panther in the Sky. It is a play that I wrote. I started writing it a long time ago, like more than 10 years ago. When I started teaching for the city colleges, a lot of my students talk about or write about gun violence in their communities. And also, before that, I was doing a lot of theater workshops with at-risk youth in different neighborhoods that are at risk. And so they would share stories, so we would always share stories with each other. So that's how I started writing Panther in the Sky, which is about 4 mothers from different communities and neighborhoods, and how they lost their children to gun violence. And so that was based off of like stories that were told to me, but also from news reports. The characters were drawn from different people who I've seen in the news reports. And so then after I wrote the first draft of it, we shared it with the community. So we had like a number of readings from, in different areas of Chicago, in the West Side, and then we also had one in Rogers Park area. And then, like I said, we did a reading at Malcolm X College as well. And so each time we open it up for the community to share their feelings and their thoughts, and also what they want to see in the play. And so I think in that way, we are engaging them and we are allowing them to participate in this process of art making. That's one of the ways. It's a specific way that I can think of how we were able to engage the community outside of the classroom. Is just going to different organizations and also neighborhoods and sharing that work. Finally, we were able to stage it in May, but now we're looking at touring it to different colleges. So we had some folks who came from UIC who wanted to bring it to UIC, and then also from Northeastern. I'm hoping that we are able to bring the play to those different settings and bring the play to the students.
That's very interesting. Gun violence in my civic engagement and American government class is one of the major issues, given our student population here at National Louis, and they're of immigrant origin. 70% of the students that I have.
Because even when we were doing a call out for auditions, we opened it up to the community, and we're not looking for professionals, but we did have some great actors. And so even in the process of creating that place, we had like 8 actors, and then we have a number of volunteers who are working on different aspects of the production, whether it's the technical part of it or the stage managing. And so then even within that, we need to make sure that we have workshops too. So we have workshops where we also discuss how gun violence affected them, impacted them, and just for them to take ownership as well of the play. And so that was really nice, because then we also have somebody come in to do a workshop on how to treat gunshot wounds. I think they really appreciated it, and I think that's what the difference is between like a professional theater company to a community theater, is that we want them to have a voice into what happens or raise questions about the play, make some suggestions, because they did that. They were like, hey, can we do this? Can we do this? And it's really good to see that, because it means they have gained ownership of it.
We should also mention that we actually met at the Chicago's Gun Violence Prevention Expo in November.
So I think that's one of the things too that we try to do, is we look for other partnerships with different organizations. A lot of the people that I met there, they helped me out and they helped market the play.
You did mention Circa Pintig as part of the community organization that you're heavily embedded in. Could you explain a bit to our students or audience what that is and how you got involved in one project that you're really proud of?
Originally, it was just Pintig Theater Group, and Pintig means heartbeat. And so it's founded in, I think, 92 or 93 by a Filipino-American activist. They wanted to do grassroots theater, and it's very much influenced by Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed style. I became involved when I joined their production in 1997. It was called Bells of Balangiga, and it was a controversy about the bells that were taken from the Philippines by the American government. It was the bells that were utilized during the Philippine-American War to warn the Filipinos about Americans coming, or to signal the attack against the Americans. That was a musical that we did in 1997, and so that's how I first got involved, and then I stayed on, and then eventually we formed CIRCA, which is the Center for Immigrant Resources and Community Arts, and that's what it stands for. We started CIRCA because some of the members of the original theater group, they were having children and they want to involve their families into the theater work, and so then we had some workshops with children, and we developed some plays for them. We had a number of children's plays that we produced, and then at some point they just kind of merged. And so now I'm still involved with that. All of our productions, I think, are pretty memorable because they all really give venue for these different issues that the community experiences, and it's a way to engage also the youth. A lot of our history is not really told in CPS, or if it is, then it's very limited, or it's told from not perspective of the Filipinos. So we do a lot of history plays. One of the plays that I enjoyed doing was the one that I called Sister Outlaw, and it was at the time, it was same-sex marriage wasn't yet legal. And so that was about a couple, and one of them is undocumented. It's a comedy, and we were able to reach within our communities who might be homophobic, also in our community because it's very Catholic, it's very religious, it's very patriarchal. So to have a play that talks about queer experience and how they are impacted by immigration is pretty bold, I think. We always have a talk back after each performance, and they expressed their feelings about the show and how it opened their minds to the issues that some other oppressed members of our community are experiencing. And I think that was really memorable for me because that was the second play that I wrote for them, but it's also that play was very close to my heart because a lot of my friends and even I had experienced that issue of immigration and also being queer. So we were able to bring it to different universities, and also we were able to bring it to outside of Illinois. I think that's one of the memorable ones, and they did the restaging of it. And people are still asking me about it. I said, we can't do that anymore because it's legal now. What we do are like plays to respond to what's going on right now and provide that space for communities to talk about those issues.
Difficult issues to address, especially in some communities. If we are to think in terms of someone coming from this academic side and trying to step into the community side, community work, what type of advice would you have for such a person?
It's always good for them to buy into whatever project it is that you want to do with the community. Like I said, when we did the Panther in the Sky, I felt like I myself did not really experience gun violence, which is thankful for that, but a lot of people that I've worked with have experienced it. And I guess living in Chicago, of course, you're affected by it, and especially when you have teenage kids or when you have kids of color. So how do I make sure that this particular project is okay for me to do since I didn't really experience that? One of the things that we did was really build that solidarity with different communities who are impacted by gun violence directly. And that's what we did when we did those readings and allowed them to give feedback. So when you come in, it's always good to include respected members of the organization in the planning, in the facilitation. Anytime that you have to get some ideas from the community, I think it's always good to co-facilitate that with someone from the community. They feel an ownership and they see the relevance of it, and they're able to communicate that relevance to the members or to whoever you would like to join.
Definitely helpful, this idea of co-ownership. Very often, at least in the literature, we read about scholars being perceived as arrogant in those communities, perhaps not understanding each other as groups with different interests, but at the same time something in common, which is empowering that community on a specific issue that you're working on. So how to overcome that perceived arrogance? It's one of the challenges, because a scholar would go in there with this perception of, I know this stuff. That's why the community would say, I've experienced those issues. So how you connect the two voices? I think it's hard.
I think also bringing in literature that already previews projects or that's very similar or have the same kind of intention as the project that you're doing. I think that to find somebody within the community that has already done a bit of work on that.
If we are to move towards the classroom, as an educator in the class, we work with marginalized, challenged communities that feel very often powerless. One thing that we see in our classrooms is this idea that whatever I'm learning here, especially on civic education issues, is not really that relevant to me, to my life. Sometimes politics or political system that I'm trying to present is just too far to be moved from students. So I guess my question would be, how do you engage with students who are a bit challenged in terms of attention, resources, time to read?
In terms of the reading, I really try to start off with a lot of personal essays and articles, and before I give them the dense material, I usually break them into groups. For example, I would assign an article to read, and one of my favorite articles to assign is actually Letter from Birmingham Jail by Martin Luther King. So I always try and break them into different parts and then have each group analyze and break down what the ideas are in there and how are they being supported, and then they come together in the end. So that's one strategy I do in terms of reading, especially when it's challenging. I have a lot of free writing, right? I do that. I give them a prompt, or I have them look for a powerful sentence or idea that they read in the text that really moved them or that they felt they could relate to, and I just have them free write on that particular sentence or idea. Even with that, they're surprised about what they actually feel about it. I always tell them found that writing is thinking on paper. Sometimes you discover what you're thinking or what you know about this topic or how you feel about it when you actually write. And so it's like not graded, because then if you say it's graded, then it's a stress. It's more of a formative assessment where they just write whatever they feel about the issue or how they think about the issue or what it reminds them of. And I always try to show similar topics but in different ways. Find a short video that I think they would like because maybe it's a young person or same age as they are or same ethnicity, and they respond really well to that. Videos and then just talking about it, or like for them to bring in what they see as connecting with the same issue, whether it's a song they heard or a movie that they saw. Always just having them mind their own experience and see how they can connect it to what's going on or what we're talking about. For example, this whole election is coming up and we want them to be engaged with that. But some of my students can't even vote because they might be undocumented. And so then one of the ways I can engage them is to bring some articles or about immigration, or maybe have them like research what are the candidates, what is the platform that they have when it comes to immigration. And so then even if they cannot vote, they are still aware of the issues that are being debated upon. Those are some of the ways that I try to engage them.
Yeah, I was thinking, talk a bit about this connection that you go through with your students and community. One of the ways that you were mentioning before in terms of getting students a bit more invested in the work is to send them to different communities. Maybe you could talk a bit about the service learning projects that you have been part of.
First thing I ask them to do is to find out what's going on in their communities. What do they have there in terms of resources, support systems, or what are some of the issues that your community is facing. And so they bring that in. And some of them are like, oh, I didn't even know that that's a shelter. And they try to volunteer in those places that are within their neighborhood. That's the first thing that they ask them to do, is first go to your neighborhood, what's going on. And they have to bring it to me and I have to prove it, because some of them might be too risky, it might not be that safe, or I worry about their safety. That's one of the things I do. I show them. One video that I used to show was the Interrupters. It's about an organization that were involved, either incarcerated facilitators or a gang member or somebody who's had a direct experience with violence, and they go out into the community and get to know the people who might be in danger of being part of a gang, or even those who are already in gangs, and they engage them and make sure that they mediate. They are really like frontliners when it comes to preventing gun violence. And so then now some of my students wanted to do or to follow them around, and I was like, okay, I don't know if that might not be safe enough for you. It's, those kinds of things. But to get them like really excited about that is, for me, because then they're engaging with the community, they're writing about a topic, they're researching a topic that they're really interested in. Yeah, I think I'm gonna do it again. It was on the shelf for a while because of the whole pandemic.
So from all the strategies that you mentioned, which one do you think would you say is the most successful one?
One of the things too that I do is I like speakers from our organizations to come and talk to them about what they're working on. So I think one of the things really interesting, and they are like, oh my God, I never even, and it just opens their minds up to other issues that might not be within their communities. So I think that's also one way that you can do is invite speakers. I think I would be, for me, I really like that hands-on assignment, having them go out in the community and participate. It's sometimes logistically is difficult to do, because some of the organizations, they require like months of vetting before they let the students in. Having them write about their stories, really a powerful thing, that they know that somebody is listening and somebody can see what they went through. Because I have them share it in class. If they want to share it, they share it through peer reviews. And I find that their best writing is that narrative.
Have you seen communities interested in welcoming and bringing in scholars to help them articulate issues that matter to them, or is it always coming from this academia side?
I think that we're very lucky because in our organization we have a few people who are in academia, and so it's always been a symbiotic relationship with the scholars and the community organization, and so kind of like informing each other's work. And I think that's what it is just to build connections, to make sure we build friendship with each other. That's where it really starts, is just making sure you participate in events that they themselves have organized and find out what it is that they're doing with the community, participate in that, and then slowly just introducing your own work and seeing how it's beneficial for both of you to work together. But I think it takes time. It's just something that you build over time, I believe. But it's not impossible, and I think it should be done.
You're definitely right. It takes time, and very often there are different interests in a way. As a scholar, you have to publish what's keeping you financed in those financial resources for future work, while on the community side, perhaps that publication is not necessarily an outcome that they would be interested in.
Although I think it really does help. For instance, one of our founder, that was her paper. And so having that publication gives the organization visibility. Also, it gives them more material to show to funders, foundations that they are trying to reach out to. Yeah, because these works that are published there, it's very validating, and sometimes that's what funders are looking for.
Is it challenging to generate these financial resources for this type of work?
Oh yeah, we did a fundraiser last October, and we were able to raise some money to pay for some of the production costs, but a lot of it comes from grants. As you know, it's very competitive now. Especially for Panther in the Sky, we wanted to offer it to the community, so then it's pay what you can. So we didn't want to tell anybody that they can't. So yeah, we relied on a lot of grants from the city and other places, I believe. And that's how we were able to bring it up. And also collaborating with Chicago Dance Theater, which is, they're a pretty established organization, and they have their own space at Foster and Ashland. And so that's how we were able to use the space for that play, because of the partnership between Circa Pintig and Chicago Dance Theater. So I think it's crucial to connect with different organizations to be able to get enough funding and use each other's resources, whether it's actors on our part and their space on their part. So
thank you, Lani. Thank you for listening. This is the Growing Democracy team at National Louis University. Stay tuned for more episodes.